to try Lyft because I thought if I get called for an interview, I'm going to need to have some experience with the company.
They're going to ask you if you ever
Exactly.
been in a Lyft
So
before.
this is a long story, but I'm telling you, all these pieces.
No, it's
Yeah.
fine. It's a good story. I asked because I wanted you to tell me. I wanted to hear it because you can't lie in an interview.
That's
You got
right.
to make it. You got to
At
at
one
least ride
time,
one time.
and I wasn't that big of an Uber guy either, but
Exactly.
I'd used Uber a few times. So I downloaded the Lyft app. I mean, all of this happened in 2 minutes. I downloaded the app and I hailed a ride. And I get the notification that the driver's coming. And it showed a little picture of a red Toyota car or something, or Nissan. And there was a name and it said Dawa Jangbu. And I thought, well, he ain't from around here. And I said, okay. So I walk outside. It says he's pulled up. So I walk out. There's a little red car. And the guy reaches over and opens the door. And I said, Dawa? And he said, Mr. Mark? And I said, yeah. And he said, oh, you pronounced my name correctly. And that was our first meeting. So I sat down in the car. We had just less than 10 minutes to go. And during that trip, this guy, I'm asking him about Lyft, about the company Lyft, because I told him, hey, man, I applied for this job. Is it a good company to work for? Blah, blah, blah. And we just hit it off. He was super friendly. But it was clear that he had some kind of Asian ethnicity, but I couldn't tell from where, and his accent was really cool, but I couldn't distinguish what it was.
And see, if you had been like most of my friends who take Uber or Lyft, they would have either asked him and not been politically correct whether or not they had been picked up from drinking or not.
Right.
So you did good. You did good with refraining from that, I guess.
I got you. Yeah. And so we get there and he asked me if I like my mechanic because he was looking for a mechanic. And I said, yeah, they're great. I said, let me give them a reference. I'll let them know that you're going to call them because I've known these people for a long time. And I needed a way to describe him to the mechanic shop. And I said, I was literally, Kenny, I was out of the car. And I was leaning in and I said, where are you from? And he said, Nepal. And I said, what? And I sat back down in his car and shut the door. And I said, you're from Nepal? And he said, yeah. And I said, do you know anything about the Everest Base Camp track? And he got this huge toothy smile on his face and looked at me and he said, Mr. Mark, I'm a Sherpa from the Everest region of Nepal. I've guided that trek dozens of times. And
wow.
You could have knocked me over with a feather. I was dumbfounded. And I said, Dawa, can we meet? And can you talk to my wife and I about this? He said, I'd be honored to do that. And he said, oh, I've got a call or I've got another ride. I've got to go. Let's exchange numbers quickly. And we did. And he drove away. And within 30 seconds, I get a text that said, Mr. Mark, this is Dawa. Just wanted to say thank you. And here's my number. That was a Thursday. The next day I left my job. And the next day we met Dawa at a Starbucks in Nashville, Saturday. So all of these things fell into place that quickly. And I apologize to everybody who's listening. I know that was a long story, but when I tell this story, I want people to understand how important it is in my view, how important it is to follow up on opportunity when it's presented to you. Because that's the difference between all of this happening and none of it happening. Because if I would have not spoken, not talked to him and not ask him where he was from, none of this would have ever happened.
So the moral of the story is every time I take an Uber, I need to ask people where they're from.
Exactly right.
And see where
it might not work out the same way every time.
I need to scan my bucket list before I take an Uber or Lyft and make sure just to see if,
That's right.
Are you from Anguilla? Oh, awesome. That was on here. Yeah. Do you have any family there I could stay with like in 5 years for the rest of my life?
Right. Do you happen to be a professional guide, for some great trip?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That is, so that's an awesome story. So at that time when you and Holly, and it sounds like you guys are definitely more than life partners. You guys are business partners. Yep. I mean, you do everything together.
Yep.
So at that point, moving forward, in your mind, you guys were going to Nepal at some point in time, right?
When we left the meeting with him that Saturday, we walked out. I'll never forget. As we were walking through the parking lot out to our car after meeting with Dawa, Holly and I said, "Okay, we're doing this. We're going to go in the spring of 2018, and we have no idea how. We have no idea how we're going to afford it, how we're going to what's going to happen. What we're going to do with our 3 kids, what we're going to do about jobs. We're making a commitment. We're going, period." And that's what we did. And so at that point, we were just planning on going as customers of Dawa, because Dawa, we found out, had his own small trekking company based in Kathmandu. But he was in America a lot of his family had immigrated to Tennessee over the past 30 years. And he was here both to work and to, learn the culture of America and to promote trekking in Nepal. So when we left that meeting, we were just going to be his customers. And then over the next about 6 months, I started scheming about, wait a minute, we could actually make a company, because I did some research and found that there was no company based east of Colorado that provided Everest Base Camp treks. They were all on the West Coast. And I thought, well, why do just the West Coast people get to have all the fun? I mean, and there's bound to be Southern people that would love to do something like this, and they would rather deal with another Southern person than they would with somebody out in California or in Europe or in Kathmandu. And also, I had the advantage of being able to build websites and do photography and write and stuff. So I knew that I could make the foundation of the company myself. And then with Dawa's partnership, I knew that I could partner with him and he could handle all of the trekking stuff that I knew nothing about. But Holly and I could handle the administrative stuff here in America, and we would be the people that people would talk to and communicate with. So it just was I thought it was a cool idea, and Holly got excited about it. Dawa was excited because he had no way to really market his company here. So it just worked out really well. We launched Hobnail Trekking in January of 2017.
And just for the listeners, of course, I've been a Mount Everest freak since I was a kid. I don't know why, I've just been consumed by it. But for the listeners, I've heard people talk about Everest Base Camp, and they're like, when I first heard about it, I didn't realize, the elevation of the base camp. So for the listeners, I lived in California. I lived right outside of Fresno, which,
right,
I don't know, was probably less than 75 to 100 miles from Mount Whitney, which is the tallest mountain in the contiguous United States. So the tallest mountain in the United States, as we know it, excluding Alaska and Hawaii, is 14,505 feet, I believe, is what Mount Whitney is. Everest Base Camp is what?
17,600 feet.
Yeah, so the base camp of Everest is higher, elevation-wise, above sea level than any place we have in the contiguous United States. I just want to kind of put that in perspective when you're talking about going to Everest Base Camp and what it means.
And not only is it higher, it's way higher. You're talking about 3,000 feet, which is the height of, most mountains on the East Coast or on the eastern. So it's a drastically higher. And when you start, also just for context, when you start the walking part of the trek, you start at 9,300 feet. You're starting
twice as high as Mount LeConte, almost.
Right.
In Tennessee.
You're right. You're starting high too. That's
Yeah.
right.
I wanted to give you some kudos about your book a second. One thing you do very well in your book is I'm a wordsmith, a word freak. My team, my employees, friends will tell you there's another name they give that as far as me and my words. But I listen a lot, and people, like, sometimes I call people out and say, no, you didn't say it could, you said should, or you didn't say might, you said will.
Right.
I listen. Words mean a lot.
Right.
And listening to your book, I'll be honest with you, I listened to a lot of the beginning of your book when you touched on your music a little bit, and you touched on meeting Dawa. But man, when you got on the plane in Nashville, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 4:30 Nashville time. It's what you said in the book, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. I was glued, and just your descriptive words of, and I lived in California, had family in Tennessee. After I went through divorce, moved out there, worked for the utility out there. So I made that trip many times from either Nashville, Chattanooga, Atlanta, Charlotte to LA, and then connected back to Fresno. When I was listening to I was tired. Like, I honestly, I felt like I was actually flying to LA, because we did the LA trip late one night from Orlando, and then we did Honolulu the next morning, and I got to spend the night in a hotel in LA. You just got off one plane right on the next and went to China. And when you talked about being the flight attendants is a funny story. So I don't want to tell the whole. I don't want to tell. I want people to download your book and listen to it. But you talking about the flight attendants is pretty funny. And then when you land in Nepal, in Kathmandu, you get in the wrong line. I'm terrified with you guys. Like, this happened 3 years ago, right? And I'm listening to this book, and I am like, because I don't know what it is about me, but I like lines and waiting and all, and not knowing and trying to get in the right. You guys waited in the wrong line to get your visa for 45 minutes and worked it all out. So I came to the conclusion with one thing. I'm going to be a customer of yours at some point in the future. Jessica and I have already talked about it. We're going.
Well, that's fantastic.
But, so I'm going to need like step by step with pictures and everything just to get me to Lukla.
Well,
I'm telling you.
I'll tell you that that whole experience gave us all the ammunition that we needed for how, for the information that we need to provide to our clients. And, just so the listeners know, when we went with a group of about 15 Americans, and it was the inaugural trip of Hopnail Trekking Company. So although we had all of Dawa's expertise, we had none of our own, other than what we had other than the research we had done. So, and not only that, we weren't world travelers at all. Period. I know a lot of people that travel all over the world, and they're used to airports. They're used to crazy immigration lines. They don't freak out. They don't stress about it. I'm not like that. I'm the worst. I'm like, I mean, I'm fairly used to flying in the United States, but when if it's a little bit out of the ordinary, I get a little nervous. And so, that whole airport thing, what we do now is we have a little graphic of the airport, and we give everybody this. It's a PNG image that they put on their phones, so that when they land in Kathmandu, they can get their phone out, they can open up that graphic, and they can literally follow the arrows, and they'll know, for the most part, they're going to know what to do. And that's all because of our experience. Yeah.
Y'all were the test run, I guess you might say. You worked out all the bugs.
We were the test dummies. Dummies.
In Kathmandu, just a couple things.
Yeah.
The first thing was there's actually three things that I remember specifically. One was the don't touch the monkeys at the monkey temple. The second one, I've actually Googled, and I watched your videos on YouTube as well. But the second one is where they had the altar where they actually cremated, they like inside the temple, and it's like an outdoor courtyard type thing. That's the second thing that people really should take a look at your videos and look at. Kathmandu is a very interesting place. And then the third one, that one I have to applaud you on, is one of y'all's employees, after you guys had a meal, took you into an art gallery, and you stayed there, and then come to find out that person actually was getting a cut, and you're like, we're done at this point. I mean, you ended the relationship, and those are the three things about Kathmandu that I remember, because that's one of the fears that I always have. Like, I've been on one cruise in my life, and that was like 3 years ago. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And the one